I still remember the way the morning light hit the kitchen windows that day, soft, pale, almost gentle enough to hide the truth that was about to break my world open. Steam curled from the mug of coffee in my hands, warm against my fingers, comforting in a way nothing else had been since the accident. And then her phone lit up on my kitchen table. Just a soft vibration, a muted glow, but it was enough, because in that tiny preview, the little line of text she never meant for me to see was my name, and a question that made my stomach twist. In that moment, with my house quiet and my nerves still raw, I knew something in my life had shifted. Something wasn't right, and the woman I thought I could trust was the very person I needed to fear. For a moment, everything was quiet. The first time I noticed it, the thing that didn't fit, I was standing on my front porch, leaning on the cane the doctor insisted I use. The air smelled like wet leaves in the neighbor's fireplace, and I was trying to breathe through the ache in my ribs when Melissa stepped out of her car. She was holding flowers and a casserole, like a scene from one of those feel-good movies where the good sister-in-law swoops in to save the day. "Claire," she whispered, rushing over, her heels clicking across the pavement. "You look so pale. Oh honey, come here." She wrapped me in a hug before I could protest. Vanilla lotion, powdery perfume, and something else, a sort of breathy sweetness that felt manufactured. I pulled back, forcing a smile. "I'm fine, just taking it slow." She cupped my shoulders and gave me that look, wide eyes, tilted head, lips pressed in sympathy. But her eyes didn't match her smile. They were too sharp, too alert, like she was studying me, and even then something felt off. Melissa had never been the warm type. Polite, sure. Present at holidays, yes. But tender? Concerned? Bringing casseroles to my door? Never. She slid past me into the house with the ease of someone who had rehearsed the moment. "Sit down, Claire. You shouldn't be on your feet. Let me help." I watched her move around my living room, setting things down, adjusting pillows, fluffing blankets. She walked with a confidence that made my skin prickle, as if she already knew where everything belonged, as if she had been here more often than I realized. I settled onto the couch, carefully lowering myself into the cushions. My side throbbed with that familiar pulse, a reminder of the night everything changed. The screech of tires, the crushing impact, the cold pavement against my cheek. I pushed the memory away. "Not now." Melissa turned toward me with a sympathetic sigh. "You must be exhausted. You poor thing, going through this alone while Mark works those long hours." Her voice trailed off just long enough to imply something unspoken. I swallowed. "He's doing what he can." I know," she said quickly, waving her hand. "I just mean it's a lot. For a couple, you need support." She sat beside me, placing a hand on my knee. The gesture was meant to feel comforting, but it sent a chill up my spine. Something about her attention felt too deliberate, too invested. For a moment, everything was quiet. Later, while I was trying to stretch my leg the way the physical therapist taught me, Melissa wandered into the kitchen. "You want some tea?" she called out. "Sure," I said, adjusting my knee brace. I heard the drawer slide open, the kettle filling, then silence, longer than it should have been. I slowly pushed myself upright and peeked around the corner. Melissa was standing at the counter, my phone in her hand. Her fingers hovered over the screen, her expression unreadable. And when she noticed me watching, she plastered on that too soft smile. "Oh, sorry it buzzed. I thought it might be Mark." She handed it back, a second too slowly, her fingertips lingering, her eyes flicking just briefly toward the living room table where she placed her own phone earlier. I didn't know why, but a knot tightened in my chest. My phone, her phone, my house, her eyes scanning the space like she was memorizing it. When she passed me on her way back to the hallway, her perfume lingered a beat too long. Then she paused. "Claire, do you feel safe being alone here when Mark's away?" The question hit me in the gut. It shouldn't have, but it did, mostly because of the way she asked it, soft, almost hesitant, like she already knew the answer. I forced a small laugh. "Of course. Why wouldn't I?" "No reason," she said quickly, smiling again. "Just thinking about you." But her eyes, that was the moment I knew the smile wasn't real. She stayed for hours, talking, cleaning, organizing things I never asked her to touch. She checked on me every time I winced, offered advice I didn't ask for, suggested resting more, suggested letting her handle a few errands. She was helpful, almost too helpful. By the time evening rolled in, the house felt too warm, like her presence was filling every corner. "I'll be back tomorrow morning," she said, pulling on her coat. "You shouldn't be alone right now." "I'm fine," I insisted gently. Her expression flickered just briefly, like she didn't like the answer. "Well," she said, recovering instantly, "I'll stop by anyway, for peace of mind." She picked up her phone from the kitchen table, and for a fleeting second, I caught a reflection in the black screen, her eyes watching me. Her smile returned, but again not her eyes. After she left, the house fell into a stillness that felt almost unnatural. I leaned against the counter, breathing slowly, trying to shake the strange heaviness she always left behind. Then her phone buzzed. Not mine, hers. I blinked at the table. There, sitting in the fading amber glow of the kitchen light, was her phone. She'd left it behind. A second buzz. The screen lit up just enough for a preview, just enough for me to read it. My name, and a message from someone labeled B. "How's Claire? Did she say anything?" I froze. My breath caught in my chest. The room seemed to tilt, the hum of the refrigerator suddenly loud enough to fill the silence. Why was Melissa texting someone about me? Who was B? And what did they want to know? Third buzz. Another message slid across the top of the screen. Keep her calm. She's vulnerable right now. The floor felt unsteady beneath me. My fingers trembled as I reached toward the phone, then pulled back. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. Those previewed words were enough to set something dark and electric crawling under my skin. Something was wrong. Very wrong. And Melissa, my helpful, sympathetic sister-in-law, was not who she pretended to be. For a moment, everything was quiet. But inside me, something had already begun to stir. The first flicker of suspicion that would grow into something much larger. Something I could never unsee. The house was too quiet after Melissa left, as if even the walls were holding their breath. Her forgotten phone sat on the kitchen table like an intruder. The dim glow long faded, yet the memory of those 2 message previews burned bright enough to make my pulse jump. I didn't touch it, not yet. Instead, I backed away, my hand gripping the counter until the cool edge steadied me. I needed to think, to breathe, to piece together why her messages about me had felt so wrong. But the truth was simple. My suspicion didn't appear out of nowhere. It had roots. It had history. Long before that text message ever lit her screen, something in my gut had known Melissa didn't quite fit in my world the way she pretended to. And as I stood there, listening to the wind roll across the porch and rattle the loose gutter, memories crept in, quiet at first like shadows forming shapes. Memories of how everything used to be. Before the accident, before the doubts, before Melissa stepped into my life like some benevolent angel, before the cracks showed. If you had asked me a year earlier, I'd have said my life was comfortably simple, quiet, warm, familiar. The kind of life built on morning routines and shared jokes, and the hum of an old porch light flickering to life at dusk. Mark and I had a ritual. Every Saturday morning, he'd make pancakes, always slightly too crispy around the edges, because he liked them that way and insisted it was extra flavor. I'd brew the coffee, leaning against the counter with messy hair and puffy eyes, listening to him hum off-key to whatever early 2000s song was stuck in his head. It wasn't a perfect life, but it was ours. And back then, before everything turned upside down, it was enough. I remember the smell of the kitchen on those mornings. Warm syrup, butter melting on the stovetop, a hint of cedar drifting in from the deck. I remember the way Mark would kiss the top of my head as he passed behind me, his hand brushing my lower back in that familiar, grounding way. Those were the moments that made a life feel safe, predictable, rooted. Melissa wasn't part of those moments. Not really. She and Mark had always been cordial siblings, close enough to show up for birthdays and holidays, but not what you'd call tight-knit. And with me, she was polite, pleasant, but there was always a bit of distance, a kind of emotional reserve that kept her at arm's length, which is why her sudden appearances, her sudden concern, already had a strange edge before I ever saw a single text message. Even now, standing alone in my dimly lit kitchen, memories played behind my eyes like flickering film reels. Not dramatic ones, not explosive, just unsettling in hindsight. It had been back in early spring, maybe 2 months before the accident. We were at Mark's mother's house for one of those family dinners where everyone talks over each other, and the food never runs out. I brought a salad, Melissa had brought her famous spinach dip, and everything felt normal enough. But somewhere between passing the breadbasket and reaching for another helping of roast chicken, she leaned close and asked, "Claire, what time does Mark get home these days?" Her tone was casual, her smile sweet, her hair pulled back in perfect waves like always. I remember blinking at her. Same as always. Why? "Oh, nothing," she'd said, waving a hand. "Just wondering how hard his new schedule is on you too." I'd shrugged it off, but she wasn't done. "And your job," she added lightly, "still doing the late nights? That must get exhausting." It wasn't the questions themselves. They were harmless on the surface. It was the way she asked them, like she was collecting data. I didn't see it then. You never do. But that was the first crack. The next moment came during the 4th of July barbecue. It was hot that day, the kind of heat that sticks to your skin like glue. Kids ran through sprinklers, grown men stood around grills debating the best rub for ribs, and the rest of us lounged under patio umbrellas, sipping lemonade. Mark was inside cleaning up spilled soda, and Melissa slid into the seat beside me. "You look tired," she said gently. I laughed. "Thanks." She smiled, but her eyes were scanning me. My hair, my face, the angle of my body in the chair. "Are you and Mark okay? He seemed stressed lately." I frowned. "We're fine. Just busy." She nodded thoughtfully. Busy can be hard on a marriage. Her tone was soft, too soft, like she wasn't asking, like she already knew something. I brushed it off again. Families talk. People speculate. Melissa could just be nosy, but something about that conversation stuck with me. Something about the way she was always watching, quietly, subtly, as if piecing together a puzzle no one told me existed. The night of the accident felt like a blur even before the medicine made it worse. Cold rain, dark roads, my headlights cutting weak streaks across the slit pavement. I'd been on my way home from a late shift. Mark had texted me to pick up milk, and I remember cursing under my breath, exhausted, wanting nothing more than to crawl into bed. I never saw the other car. Just the sudden flash of white headlights, the jolt, the spin, metal against metal, a scream, I don't even know if it was mine, then cold asphalt, and sirens. Mark met me at the hospital, face pale, hands trembling. He held on to me like he thought I might disappear. But Melissa showed up an hour later, still in her heels, still immaculate, as if she hadn't rushed at all. And her first words weren't, "Are you okay?" or "What happened?" They were, "Claire, chair. Do you remember anything? I thought she meant the crash, and maybe she did, but the question felt pointed. Even then, even when I was groggy and hurting and scared, it felt odd. And from that moment, she was suddenly everywhere. My house, my kitchen, my bedroom door, showing up with soups and flowers, hovering in corners, offering help I never asked for. Her kindness was suffocating, her presence invasive, and every day she stayed longer. Every day she watched more. And I, half-drugged, half-healing, let her, because I needed help, because I was vulnerable, and she knew it. A car passed outside, its headlights flashing across my wall, snapping me back to the present. Melissa's phone still sat on the table, silent now, innocuous looking, as if it weren't a grenade waiting to explode. Keep her calm. She's vulnerable. The words spun in my mind, sharp and cold. I swallowed hard. My hand drifted toward the phone again, but hovered above it, trembling. I wasn't ready. Not yet. Instead, I eased into a chair, letting the cool wind press into my spine. My ribcage ached with every breath. The injury pulsed, a dull, stabbing reminder of the night everything derailed. I tried to distract myself, looking around my living room. The throw blanket Melissa folded earlier lay too perfectly along the couch, the pillows too carefully arranged. The scent of her lotion still clung to the air. Vanilla, artificial, cloying. She had been everywhere today, touching everything, as if imprinting herself onto the house. My house, the place that was supposed to be safe. Another gust of wind rattled the porch. I pulled the blanket tighter around my shoulders, shivering. And then, quietly, carefully, I gathered up the courage to retrieve Melissa's phone. I turned it toward me. The screen was dark now, but the image burned behind my eyelids. My name in someone else's conversation. Someone named B. Someone she wasn't supposed to be talking to about me. My pulse pounded. My breath hitched. And in that tiny kitchen, surrounded by the remnants of Melissa's false kindness, I realized something huge. This wasn't the beginning of trouble. This was the middle of something that had started long before I noticed it. My silence wasn't safety. My trust wasn't protection. And I had been blind for far too long. For the next hour, I paced the house as much as my injured leg allowed. Back and forth, step limp, like walking might shake off the unease crawling under my skin. I told myself I was overreacting, that it could be innocent, that Melissa was weird but not dangerous. Maybe the messages were taken out of context. Maybe B was a friend. Maybe vulnerable was her way of expressing concern. People talk. People exaggerate. People gossip, right? But the knots in my stomach refused to loosen. I opened a window for air. Cool night breeze filtered in, carrying the smell of damp grass and someone's laundry detergent. The kind of scent that normally calmed me. Not tonight. I pressed my forehead against the window frame, the cool glass a temporary relief. You're imagining things, I whispered to myself. But was I? I let out a long breath, watching the fog from my exhale spread across the glass. Maybe I needed sleep. Yes, sleep would help. Sleep would make everything rational again. I turned from the window, moving toward the stairs. A buzz, short, sharp, coming from the kitchen. My heart plummeted. Her phone buzzed again. I closed my eyes. My breath froze in my chest. This time, I didn't hesitate. I limped toward the table, each step a slow drumbeat in the quiet house. And there it was. Another message preview. From B. Did she notice anything yet? My world tilted. The breath I'd been holding escaped in a shudder. So I wasn't imagining it. I wasn't overthinking. I wasn't paranoid. Someone was watching me. Someone was waiting. Someone was analyzing my reactions like a lab experiment. Melissa, and whoever B was, they were planning something, and I had no idea what. The message disappeared from the screen, replaced by the dark reflection of my own stunned face. That's when the fear turned into something else. Something colder, sharper, more dangerous. Determination. If someone was playing with my life, I needed to know why. For a long moment, I stood perfectly still, staring at the phone as if it might come alive. The kitchen light hummed faintly overhead, washing everything in a pale yellow glow that made my skin look cold and unfamiliar. My breath came shallow and quick, each inhale brushing painfully against my bruised ribs. Did she notice anything yet? My name in the first message, a question about me in the second. Whoever B was, they were monitoring me, tracking me, and Melissa was the one feeding them information. I felt suddenly exposed, like the walls had eyes, like the shadows under my cabinets held secrets I didn't understand. The silence in the house wasn't comforting anymore. It was suffocating. Heavy. Too heavy. I backed away from her phone again, my fingertips icy. I wanted to scream, to run outside, to demand answers. But I also knew, for the first time since the accident, that I needed to be careful. One wrong move and I might tip my hand too soon. I sank slowly into the nearest dining chair, the wood groaning beneath me. My injured leg throbbed with a dull pulsing ache. I wiped my palms on my sweatpants, my fingers trembling. I whispered to myself, "What are you doing, Claire? What is this?" No answer came, only the low hum of the refrigerator in the background, filling the tense silence with a mechanical heartbeat. For a moment, everything was quiet. I didn't sleep that night. I tried. God knows I tried. I crawled into bed around midnight, pulling the blankets up around my shoulders, hoping comfort might override fear. The sheets were cold. Too cold. The room felt foreign, wrong, as if someone had rearranged it while I wasn't looking. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Melissa's smile. Sweet, soft, fake, the kind that didn't reach her eyes. I saw the text messages. The words burned themselves into the inside of my eyelids. I I rolled over, wincing as my ribs protested. The clock glowed 12:57 a.m., then 1:13 a.m., then 1:48 a.m. My mind raced in circles, always returning to the same gut-punching truth. Melissa wasn't here to help me. She was here to watch me. But why? At some point, exhaustion dragged me under, but it wasn't sleep. It was more like slipping into a shallow, restless haze. I kept jolting awake at every creak of the house, every gust of wind, every phantom memory of her heels clicking across my tile. When the sun finally rose, pale and tired-looking, I felt the same way. I made coffee slowly, carefully, the way the physical therapist recommended. Small movements, deliberate shifts of weight, no sudden turns. The smell of dark roast filled the kitchen, warm and grounding, but it didn't calm me the way it usually did. I kept glancing at the spot on the table where her phone had been. It was gone now. She had returned early in the morning to pick it up, before I even made it downstairs. I'd heard the door creak, her soft footsteps, her whisper of sorry, just grabbing this, before the front door clicked shut again. Too fast, too nervous, too rehearsed. She didn't look at me when she left. That told me everything. I wrapped both hands around my mug and exhaled slowly. The warmth seeped into my palms, grounding me just enough to think again. This wasn't going to stop. It wasn't going to go away on its own, and I couldn't afford to ignore it. If Melissa was plotting something, if she was manipulating me while pretending to take care of me, I needed answers. Real answers. I just didn't know where to begin. But later that afternoon, fate intervened. Melissa had come over again, right on schedule, carrying a bag of groceries and a too bright smile. She insisted on making lunch. She insisted on cleaning up afterward. She insisted on sitting with me while I rested on the couch. And then, I'm going to run to the bathroom, she said, touching my shoulder gently. I nodded. Sure. Her phone sat on the coffee table this time, face up, unlocked, carelessly abandoned. Was it intentional? Did she think I wouldn't dare look again? My heart pounded so loudly I could hear it in my ears. I stared at the phone, every nerve in my body screaming to reach for it, but I didn't. Not yet. The hum of the ceiling fan filled the room. The clock ticked softly on the mantel. My leg throbbed. My breath quickened. Then it happened. Her phone buzzed. Once, twice. This time the previews appeared clear as day. You're doing great. Keep her calm today. Did she ask about anything yesterday? My skin prickled. My mouth went dry. I wasn't imagining things. I wasn't misreading. I wasn't paranoid. Something was happening behind my back, and it was escalating. Without thinking, I lifted my hand and slid the phone closer, not unlocking it, just tilting the screen enough to see another preview pop up. Remember, take pictures if you can. We need proof she's unstable. My stomach lurched. Unstable? Proof? What were they planning? Before I could process more, the bathroom door clicked softly. I shoved the phone back into its exact position. Same angle, same orientation, same distance from the coaster. My heart racing as I returned my hands to my lap. Melissa walked back into the room, her expression carefully neutral. Too neutral, like she was checking my face for clues. You okay? She asked, setting her hair behind her ear. You look pale again. I didn't sleep much, I said quietly. Her smile softened. Poor thing. But her eyes, they flit to her phone. Just for a split second. Quick, assessing, anxious. And in that moment I knew. She thought I saw something, and she was scared. I forced a steady breath. I'll be alright. Melissa nodded, her shoulders loosening just slightly, just enough to confirm my suspicion that she had been waiting for my reaction. I played tired, confused, oblivious. Inside I was burning. For the next few days I started paying attention. Really paying attention. Every whisper, every glance, every excuse she made to step outside or pick up her phone. I noticed that Melissa always angled her phone away from me now. I noticed she took calls in the hallway instead of the kitchen. I noticed she wore a smile that didn't quite sit right. One afternoon, when she thought I was asleep on the couch, I heard her voice drifting from the guest room. Low, urgent, unlike her soft, sugary tone. No, she hasn't figured it out yet. A pause. Yes, I know. I will. Another pause, softer this time. Yes, I miss you too. I lay perfectly still, my heart pounding so loudly I worried she'd hear it from the hallway. Miss you too. So B wasn't a friend, wasn't a colleague. He was someone intimate, someone she didn't want Mark or me to know about. My chest tightened. This wasn't random. This wasn't innocent. This wasn't a misunderstanding. Melissa had a plan, and I was in the center of it. The next morning, I decided to test her. Melissa, I said casually while we ate breakfast, do you think I should tell Mark about the other night? The weird texts. Her fork froze midair. Then slowly, she relaxed her grip and placed it down gently. Weird texts. She laughed. Too loudly. Too sudden. Claire, honey, the meds are messing with your sleep. You're tired. You probably misread or dreamed it. I remember it, I said softly. She leaned over, wrapped her hand around mine. You've been through so much. You can't trust your mind right now. The words stung in a way she didn't intend. Or maybe she did intend them. Unstable. Proof. Their plan was starting to show itself piece by piece. I pulled my hand back gently. Maybe you're right. Her smile returned. Of course I'm right. You just rest. Let me handle things. Let me handle things. The phrase echoed in my mind long after she left that day. That evening, with Melissa gone early for once, I moved through the house slowly, leaning on my cane, every shadow stretching long across the hardwood floor. I checked drawers, cabinets, the guest room she had been using. Nothing obvious, but subtle things. Dozens. The silverware underwear drawer rearranged. My medicine moved from the left side of the shelf to the right. The stack of mail shifted, one envelope sticking out more than before. My purse slightly unzipped. My bedroom closet door left ajar. Little things, small enough to dismiss, but together they painted a picture that made my stomach twist. She'd been looking through my things. She'd been watching me longer than I realized. She'd been planning something, and I was done playing blind. The next day, I decided to try something bold, something risky, something only Melissa's accomplice would know. While she was wiping down the kitchen counters, I let my voice carry just enough for her to hear from across the room. You know, I said casually, I've been thinking about going through my old documents. You know, the insurance stuff? I want to see what needs updating. She froze. Her hand stopped mid-wipe. Slowly, she turned. Oh, her smile was tight. What made you think of that? I don't know, I said lightly. Just feels like it's a good time to review things. A flicker of something crossed her face. Fear? Surprise? Panic? She masked it quickly, but not quickly enough. That's interesting timing, she said softly. Why? Oh, no reason, she replied, forcing a smile. I just didn't think you'd be up to handling paperwork yet. She was nervous. Could feel it. Good, because the next day I got my answer. Melissa arrived earlier than usual, carrying a bag of groceries and a forced smile that stretched too tightly across her face. She placed her phone on the table. I didn't look at it. I didn't have to, because minutes later, while she was chopping vegetables in the kitchen, her phone buzzed, and a message preview slid across the screen. A single line. A single confirmation. She mentioned the documents. Did she find them? My breath caught. It was the exact thing I'd said the day before. Something no one but Melissa should have known. And yet there it was, echoed back to her, repeated by B. Proof. Solid proof. Melissa wasn't just reporting on me. She was reporting everything I said. Every movement, every word, every vulnerability. And she was doing it with someone who clearly had a plan that involved me, my state of mind, my behavior, and now my documents. A cold wave washed over me. This wasn't caregiving. This wasn't kindness. This was surveillance. This was manipulation. This was danger. And the confirmation was chilling. Melissa hadn't just been watching me. She was playing a role. And her phone, those tiny previews, had finally told me the truth. I didn't confront Melissa right away. I couldn't. Not without proof strong enough to hold its own weight. So I watched her closely over the next few days, hiding my fear under a calm smile. She seemed almost too comfortable in my house now, drifting from room to room as if she owned the space, opening drawers, moving things, offering to organize parts of my life I had never invited her into. And I let her only because I needed to understand her angle. Her behavior shifted subtly, but enough to unsettle me. She began insisting I rest more, always urging me back to the couch when I tried to stand. She gently scolded me for trying to make my own meals. She offered to pick up my mail every morning so I wouldn't have to bend. Then she started asking questions, soft ones, innocent ones, about my bank account, my passwords, our home documents, my insurance plan. Each time she mentioned money or paperwork, she did it with careful phrasing, like someone pushing a door to see if it was unlocked. One afternoon, she brought me a stack of envelopes she'd already opened for convenience, bills, statements, and a letter addressed to me from my insurance provider, something about coverage updates. I stared at the torn envelope, feeling a slow wave of anger crawling up my throat. She watched me as I read, her expression too patient, too curious for someone who was supposedly helping. My fingers tightened around the paper. She wanted access to something, and she was pushing gently, deliberately, waiting for me to slip. The next breakthrough came unexpectedly. I was upstairs grabbing a sweater when I heard her voice drifting up from the bottom of the staircase. She was on the phone, whispering urgent, her tone nothing like her syrupy sweetness with me. I don't know, she hissed. She's stubborn, and she keeps asking about Mark. A pause. No, not yet, but she will. I just need time. Her words froze me in place. My heart hammered in my chest. She wasn't only reporting on me, she was watching Mark too. I leaned closer, holding the banister for balance. Yes, I know what's at stake, she continued softly. Just trust me. The insurance payout alone. The words struck me like ice water. Insurance payout. The room spun. I clutched the railing, my breath caught between my ribs. Insurance payout, mine or Mark's? And why was she talking about it so casually, as if planning around it? I stepped down quietly, staying out of sight. She continued whispering. She'll sign eventually. She's weak. That accident rattled her more than she admits. Her voice dipped into something almost amused. Yes, B, I'll take care of it. I couldn't hear the rest. Blood roared in my ears. She ended the call seconds later and walked into the kitchen, humming softly as if she hadn't just confirmed my darkest fears. I sat on the bottom stair, trembling. My mind raced through every interaction since the accident, every gentle touch, every meal she cooked, every time she stood a little too close behind me, and it hit me with a bone-deep chill. She didn't just want access to my life. She wanted control of it. That evening, I pretended to sleep on the couch. Melissa moved around the house quietly, wiping counters, adjusting picture frames, picking up my prescriptions. Vibrations from her phone buzzed against the kitchen table. I stayed perfectly still, listening to her footsteps, trying to steady my breathing. Eventually, she stepped outside to take another call, unaware that she'd left her phone unlocked on the counter again. This time, I didn't look immediately. I waited, counting my breaths, making sure she wasn't coming back too soon. When the quiet settled into the walls walls, I stood slowly, leaning on my cane, my ribs aching with each step. I moved close enough to see the screen. New messages filled the unlocked chat with E. Make sure she doesn't get stressed. She signs faster when she's calm. Get her to trust you more. We need her willing. My mouth went dry. Then another message came through right in front of me. We need proof she's unstable. Keep recording. Recording me. I stared at the message, horror building in my chest. She wasn't just reporting on me. She was collecting evidence, twisting my behavior, creating some kind of narrative. A message from earlier in the thread caught my eye. If she hesitates, remind her she can't handle finances right now. Another, do not let her talk to Mark alone. Not until after the transfer. Transfer? My whole body went cold. I scrolled up one line farther, and what I saw made my heart stop. A photo of me, taken while I was asleep. The angle was from the doorway of my bedroom, the soft glow of my bedside lamp illuminating my face. My mouth slightly open, my blankets tangled around me. I stared at the image, a sickening wave rolling through my stomach. My breath came in tiny rapid gasps. Melissa had been in my room at night, standing over me, taking pictures. I suddenly felt every inch of my skin crawl, my entire body recoiling from invisible hands, invisible eyes. I staggered backwards, nearly knocking over a chair. The back door handle rattled softly. She was coming inside. I shoved the phone back exactly where it was and hurried to the couch, forcing my body into the same position as before. I closed my eyes just as her footsteps entered the kitchen. She lingered there for a moment, silent, watching me, waiting. I kept my breathing slow, shallow, pretending to sleep while my heart slammed wildly against my ribs. Eventually, she turned off the lights and went to the guest room. Only when her door clicked shut did I let out the breath I'd been holding. I barely slept. Fear seeped into every corner of the room like a slow-moving fog. Whenever I closed my eyes, I pictured that photo. Melissa's silhouette standing in my doorway. The sound of her soft breathing inches from my bed. Around dawn, I made myself a decision, one that steadied the shaking in my hands. I would play along. I would smile. I would nod. I would let her believe she still had control. And while she thought I was weak, exhausted, and easily led, I would gather everything. Every message. Every phone preview. Every whispered conversation. I needed evidence. I needed clarity. I needed to survive this. That morning, Melissa walked into the kitchen with her usual bright smile. Good morning, she chimed, placing a plate of toast in front of me. How did you sleep? I lifted the toast, my fingers steady despite the storm inside me. Better. I lied with a soft smile. She relaxed. She believed me. Good. I was no longer the one being watched. I was the one watching her. But by the end of that day, everything escalated again. She left her phone unlocked on the counter, careless, confident in her performance. I waited until she reached for the laundry basket in the hallway, then glanced at the lit screen. It was the same chat, scrolling on its own because she just opened it. A long thread of messages, and at the very top, the newest one. Her state of mind is perfect. Just keep her isolated. Once she signs the papers, we're done. Papers, insurance payout, transfer, unstable. Everything suddenly connected. The conversations, her insistence on handling my mail, her push to help with finances, her subtle comments about me being forgetful, overwhelmed, not thinking clearly. She was setting me up, not just for manipulation, but for legal incapacitation. She wanted me declared mentally compromised, or at least emotionally unwell, long enough to sign something important. And she needed me to trust her enough to hand over control. My stomach twisted violently as I stared at that final text. One thought rose above all the fear. She wasn't just pretending to care. She was planning something dangerous. And now I knew the truth. I was running out of time. The night everything shattered began quietly, almost peacefully. Melissa made dinner like she always did, stirring soup, slicing bread, humming some soft tune that didn't match the coldness in her eyes. I watched her from the kitchen table, pretending to be tired, pretending the medication made me foggy. She kept glancing at me as if checking how pliable I was, how compliant I remained. After we ate, she gathered the dishes and insisted I go rest. You need sleep, she said gently. You've been so overwhelmed lately. Overwhelmed. Her favorite word. The one she used to plant seeds of doubt in me. I stretched out on the couch, letting my eyelids droop just enough to convince her I was drifting. She turned off the living room lamp, the room dipping into warm shadows. When she passed behind me, I heard the faint sound of her fingers brushing the back of the couch, almost like a test to see if I'd react. I didn't. I lay still. She headed down the hallway, her footsteps light. She paused at the guest room door. A soft click followed. Moments later, her voice drifted out, low and hushed. I waited until silence settled, then slowly, carefully, I pushed myself up. Every rib screamed in protest, but fear is a powerful anesthetic. I held my breath and listened. No movements, no floorboards creaking, no footsteps coming back down the hall. Now, I grabbed my cane and stood cautiously, steadying myself against the wall. My heart pounded so hard it shook my chest. The house felt like it was watching me. Each shadow stretching long, each corner echoing with tension. I made my way to the kitchen, each step a small battle. Melissa's phone lay charging near the coffee maker, the soft glow of the screen reflecting faintly off the countertop. It wasn't locked. She'd been careless again. Too confident. My hands trembled as I picked it up. I opened the messages with B, and for the first time, I scrolled. Picture after picture appeared. Images of me lying in bed, sitting on the couch, eating dinner, looking exhausted, confused, vulnerable. Photos taken without my knowledge, without my consent. Evidence, she had called it. Proof. Further down the thread were voice notes. I hesitated, then pressed play. Melissa's laughing whisper filled the quiet kitchen. "She's so out of it," she said, mocking the grogginess in my voice. "You should have seen her today. She could barely remember where she put her keys." Another message played. "She won't question anything. She trusts me completely." A third. "If we push now, she'll sign the papers before she realizes anything." Papers, insurance documents, financial forms, whatever they were. She had been preparing to make me sign them for weeks. My pulse quickened, my throat tightening. I scrolled further until I found the part of the conversation that made my knees weaken. "The accident was lucky. She's scared now. Perfect timing." I stared at the words. Lucky. Perfect timing. My breath stalled. I felt dizzy, nauseous. My mind clung to a single horrifying possibility. Melissa knew about my accident, not after it happened, but before. There was more. Another message from B. "She still doesn't know you were there that day." My heart stopped. I read the message again. There that day. There. At the accident. I couldn't breathe. I scrolled upward, searching for something that disproved it, something that made sense, something that told me I'd misunderstood. Instead, I found a message from Melissa. Of course she doesn't know. She was too disoriented to see. My legs buckled. I caught myself on the counter, the phone slipping slightly in my hand. Her voice notes, her messages, her laughter, her lies, all of it crashed together in a single devastating truth. She had been there the night I crashed. She had been watching, maybe following, maybe more. A small sound escaped my throat, something between a gasp and a broken whisper, and that's when I heard it. Floorboards creaking behind me. I froze, heart slamming against my ribs. The kitchen felt suddenly too small, too bright, too exposed. I turned slowly, the phone still glowing in my hand. Melissa was standing in the doorway. Her silhouette was framed by the hall light behind her, her hair messy from lying down, her eyes half-lidded like she'd just woken from a nap or had been listening for a while. "Claire," she whispered softly. Her voice was quiet, too calm. I swallowed hard. I couldn't sleep. She stepped forward, her socks soundless against the tile. "What are you doing up?" she asked, her gaze drifting, almost lazily, toward her phone in my hand. My fingers tightened around it instinctively. She noticed. Her smile thinned. "Were you going through something?" I tried to speak, but my voice caught. I felt my throat closing, my breath unsteady. "I needed to check the time," I lied weakly. Melissa stepped even closer. "Let me see the phone." She held out her hand. I didn't move. Her expression sharpened ever so slightly. Still calm, still gentle, but her eyes darkened. "Claire," she said softly, "give me the phone." My heart hammered. My palms were damp. I forced myself to shake my head. "No." That single word shifted the air between us. Melissa's face changed. Subtle, quick. The sweetness drained, leaving something colder, calculating, hollow, stripped of pretense. She took a step closer, her jaw tightening. "Claire," she said again, "you're not well. You shouldn't be handling things alone. You've been confused lately. The medication." "Stop." My voice cracked. "I know what you're doing." She froze. A flicker crossed her eyes. Fear or anger. I backed up slowly, reaching for my cane with my free hand. My ribs burned with each breath. "I know about the messages. I saw everything." She inhaled sharply. "You're misunderstanding. You took pictures of me," I whispered. "You've been reporting on me. You've been lying to me, manipulating me." Her jaw clenched. "Claire, listen. You were there the night of the accident," I said, voice trembling. "You were there." A long, heavy silence filled the kitchen. Melissa didn't speak. She didn't deny it. She just stared at me, breathing slowly, eyes unreadable. Then she gave a tiny, almost chilling smile. "You shouldn't have done that," she murmured. "You really shouldn't have." My stomach dropped. She took one step toward me. I clutched the phone to my chest. "Go back to bed," she said, her tone slipping into something low and stern, "and give me the phone. Right now." "No," I whispered. Her lips parted slightly, just enough for the mask to crack, revealing the anger simmering beneath. In that moment, survival outweighed fear. I ran. Not fast. My leg wouldn't let me go far, but fast enough to put space between us. I limped down the hall toward my bedroom, slamming the door behind me and locking it. My breaths were ragged, my body trembling violently. On the other side of the door, Melissa's footsteps stopped. Silence stretched long and suffocating. Then her voice came, soft and eerily calm. "You're overthinking this," she said through the wood. "You're scared, tired, confused." A pause. "That's why you need me." Her hand pressed lightly against the door. I could feel it through the wood. "Open the door, Claire." I stepped back, clutching the phone so tightly my knuckles ached. "No." Another pause. Then she walked away. Her footsteps faded down the hall. I didn't sleep that night either. I sat on the floor until dawn, gripping her phone, staring at the messages, letting the truth settle in piece by piece. Melissa wasn't acting alone. Melissa wasn't guessing. Melissa had a plan, and I had proof. But as terrifying as it was, one thought pierced through the fear like a beam of light. If she wanted me isolated, if she didn't want me talking to Mark, then telling him might be the one thing she feared. And if that was true, it was time to stop hiding. It was time to take back control. It was time for this to end. Morning crept in slowly, pale and hazy, sliding through the blinds in thin stripes across my bedroom wall. I hadn't slept at all. My back ached from sitting on the floor. My ribs throbbed with each breath, and my eyes felt raw and heavy. But beneath the exhaustion was something new, something steady, resolve. Before Melissa woke, before she could check her phone, before she could twist my fear into confusion again, I powered her device off completely. I'd already screenshotted everything, sending every message and picture to my laptop. I deleted the evidence of what I'd done, returned the phone to the hallway table outside my room, and waited. When I heard her door open, her footsteps were lighter than usual, careful, listening. She hesitated outside my door, the silence stretching far too long. Then she tapped lightly. Claire, you awake? I swallowed the tremor in my voice. Yeah, 1 second. I opened the door slowly. Melissa stood there in her robe, hair slightly tangled, smiling like a mother checking on a sick child. But her eyes were dark, searching, trying to read my expression. You didn't sleep well, she murmured. Your energy is off. I forced a small smile. Just tired. Can we start over today? Her entire body relaxed at those words. Her smile softened into something warm, almost triumphant. Of course we can, sweetheart. Sweetheart. The same word she used in those messages. The one she used when mocking me. I stepped aside and let her pass, watching the way her face shifted into her sweet caretaker persona as she moved through the kitchen, humming quietly. She brewed coffee, made oatmeal, fussed over me like nothing had happened. But every move she made, every glance, every tiny hesitation, only confirmed what I already knew. She still believed I was under her control. I needed her to think that, just long enough for Mark to come home. I picked at my oatmeal while she fluttered around me, her voice full of false concern. You're shaky today. Are you feeling anxious? Maybe you should rest more. We should go over your mail again. There were some things you seemed confused about. I trust you, I said softly. The effect of those 3 words was instant. Her shoulders loosened. Her eyes brightened. She tilted her head in that familiar, gentle pose. I'm glad, she whispered. She didn't notice the shift in me, the steadiness, the clarity, because monsters who hide behind kindness never expect their victims to stop shaking. Around noon, while she was folding laundry on the couch, I excused myself and went upstairs. I closed the bedroom door and dialed Mark's number, hands trembling slightly, not from fear this time, but from the weight of what I was about to do. He answered on the second ring. Hey Claire, everything okay? For a moment my throat tightened. Hearing his voice, steady, worried, familiar, made my eyes sting. I need you to come home, I whispered. Today, as soon as you can. Mark paused. The shift in his tone was immediate. Did something happen? Are you hurt? No, I need you here. No details. Not yet. I didn't know how much Melissa had manipulated or twisted. He exhaled shakily. I'll be there. It'll take me an hour. Relief flooded through me. Thank you. I hung up, inhaling deeply. Phase 1 was done. Now came the performance. I went back downstairs, pretending to be sluggish, disoriented, just overwhelmed enough for Melissa to believe she still had the upper hand. I let her guide me through paperwork she conveniently found, little forms she tried to slip in front of me, full of legal language she claimed would help me with my recovery. Almost like she were testing if I'd sign now, if my defenses were low. Let's wait until Mark comes home, I said softly. Her eyebrows lifted for a fraction of a second, surprise, maybe irritation, before she covered it with a smile. Oh, I thought he was working late. He said he might come home early today. Well, she said sweetly, that'll be nice. But when she turned, her jaw clenched. She knew something didn't fit. From that point on, she watched me even more carefully. Every move, every breath, every glance at the clock. When Mark finally pulled into the driveway, Melissa stiffened, her smile tightening at the edges. She smoothed her hair, adjusted her shirt, and stepped slightly in front of me, as if she needed to retain control of the environment. The front door opened. Mark stepped inside, eyes immediately landing on me. Relief washed over his face. Claire, you okay? I'm fine, I said softly, but we need to talk. Melissa stepped in quickly, plastering on her gentle expression. Mark, she's been so confused lately. I think she might be overwhelmed and... Please sit down, I said. My voice surprised even me, calm, direct, steady. Both of them froze. Mark stepped closer to me instinctively, resting a hand on my shoulder. Melissa hesitated, then reluctantly sat on the couch across from us. She kept her hands folded neatly in her lap, knuckles whitening slightly from the pressure. I walked into the dining room and returned with a stack of printed screenshots, over 40 pages of messages, photos, and audio transcriptions. I placed them on the coffee table. Melissa stared at them, then slowly raised her eyes to mine. A long silence filled the room. Mark looked between us, confusion deepening with every second. Claire, he whispered. What is this? I didn't answer him. I looked at her. Melissa, I said quietly. These are your messages. Her throat bobbed. For a moment she said nothing. Then she laughed, softly, shakily. Claire, darling, you're misinterpreting things. I was talking to a friend about helping you through stress. Those messages, they're taken out of context. You're tired, sweetheart. You've been imagining. Stop calling me sweetheart, I said sharply. Her smile flickered. I turned to Mark slowly. She's been been reporting on me, monitoring me, taking pictures of me while I slept, lying to you, manipulating both of us. Melissa lunged forward slightly, voice rising. That's not true. She's unstable, Mark. You know how out of it she's been since the accident. I picked up the pages and placed the first one in Mark's hands. The screenshot of the message. We need proof she's unstable. Then the next. She'll sign if she trusts me enough. And the next one. The picture of me sleeping, timestamped, taken inside my bedroom. Mark's face drained of color. He flipped page after page, each one hitting him like a blow. Her voice notes mocking me, her plans with B, the mention of insurance, the references to isolating me. His hands began to shake. He turned slowly toward his sister. Melissa, he whispered. What is this? Her mask cracked then, finally. Her lips tightened, her eyes going cold, her shoulders straightening into something rigid and unrecognizable. She looked at him, then at me, something dark and furious swirling in her expression. You shouldn't have looked at my phone, she said softly. That's all you have to say? Mark choked out. It was for your own good, she hissed. My own good, he repeated, voice breaking into shock. You tried to convince me she was unstable? You were in her room at night? You were there the night she crashed. Melissa flinched, looking away. I didn't mean for things to go that far. You didn't mean? Mark stood abruptly, rage and betrayal mixing violently in his face. You could have killed her. What were you thinking? She didn't answer. Or maybe she couldn't, because for the first time since this nightmare began, Melissa had lost control. Mark stepped between us protectively, turning fully toward her. Sit down, he said quietly. His voice contained something I hadn't heard in weeks, anger sharpened by clarity. And whatever he told her next, I knew it would unravel everything she'd been trying to build. The room felt smaller the moment Mark told her to sit. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried a weight that made even the air pause. Melissa didn't move at first. Her fingers twitched. Her jaw tightened as she tried to decide which persona to put on. The sweet caretaker, the worried sister, the misunderstood victim. She chose none of them. Instead, she lowered herself onto the edge of the couch, shoulders stiff, eyes flicking between the stack of paper and the door, as if deciding which escape would be easier. Mark stood in front of her, breathing hard, one hand braced on the coffee table. I watched the muscles in his shoulders tense and release, the disbelief shaking through him like a tremor he couldn't contain. You lied to me, he said quietly. His voice trembled at the end, not with anger but with something deeper. Hurt. Melissa's lips parted, forming some small trembling smile. Mark, she's manipulating you. You've seen how confused she is since the accident. You know how. Stop, he snapped. Her mouth snapped shut. Mark ran a hand over his face, the way he always did when overwhelmed. He took a breath, holding on to it like it might keep him from shattering. Before we go any further, he said, turning to me, there's something you need to hear. Something I should have told you sooner. My stomach tightened. I wasn't ready for more, not after everything, but his expression told me it wasn't optional. He sank onto the couch beside me, elbows on his knees, staring at the floor. Took him a moment to speak. Claire, months before the accident, Melissa came to me. The world seemed to tilt. I blinked at him, heart pounding. She told me you were planning to leave, he whispered. She said you were unhappy, that you talked to her about divorce. My mouth fell open. What? That's not true. I never. I know, he said quickly. I know that now. His voice cracked. He closed his eyes, exhaling shakily. She showed me things, Claire. Screenshots. Messages she said were from your phone. Stuff that made it look like you were pulling away from me. Stuff about finances. About taking things with you. A cold chill ran down my back. She forged them, I whispered. He nodded silently. I didn't want to believe her, he continued, but she'd show up crying, saying she was worried about you, about us. And she kept saying she didn't want to lose her brother in a messy split. My throat burned. And I was stressed, he said, voice barely above a whisper. I wasn't thinking straight, so I started pulling back. I didn't talk to you. I avoided things. And when you kept asking what was wrong, I didn't know how to explain what I'd seen. He scrubbed both hands over his face, shoulders trembling now. Then the night of the accident, when the hospital called, his voice choked. I realized how stupid I'd been. How blind. The living room blurred for a moment. My chest ached, not just from pain, but from the weeks of emotional distance that suddenly made sense. The nights he'd been quiet. The mornings he'd left early. The way he'd looked at me sometimes, confused and hurt. Melissa turned her head away, staring at the wall. I didn't think she'd do all this, Mark whispered. I thought she was misled or mistaken. I didn't know she was planning something. Not until you called me today. He finally lifted his head, eyes glassy and full of apology. I'm so sorry. Before I could answer, Melissa spoke for the first time in minutes. Her voice was sharp, brittle. You were never supposed to see those messages. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Mark turned slowly, disbelief washing across his face. That's what you have to say? Melissa's mask slid fully then. She pressed her palms into her knees and leaned forward. I did it because I had to, she said. My breath caught. Had to. You were ruining him, she snapped. You were making him weak. He was drowning under your needs, your work, your moods, and you didn't even see it. Mark stared at her like she'd spoken another language. What are you talking about? You deserved better, she told him. You always have. A chill swept through me. This wasn't just manipulation. It was obsession. Melissa, Mark whispered carefully. Did you want Claire gone? Her jaw clenched. She She didn't answer. She didn't have to. Mark leaned back stunned. My God, I wasn't going to hurt her, Melissa said quickly. But accidents happen. People get overwhelmed. People make bad decisions when they're mentally exhausted. The implication behind her words hit me like ice. She glanced at me with a cold flicker in her eyes. A flicker that said yes. She considered my accident an opportunity. Mark shook his head slowly, heartbreak twisting his features. You tried to destroy our marriage. You tried to isolate her. You tried to make me think. I tried to protect you, she said firmly. Protect me? By making me think my own wife was unstable. You would have thanked me eventually. The silence that followed was suffocating. Mark stood up, breathing hard, as if he needed distance from the couch, from her, from the poison she poured into his life. I'm calling the police, he said. Melissa shot to her feet. No, you can't. Mark, please. Sit down, he said again, voice steel now. She reached toward him. He stepped back, revulsion crossing his face. Don't, he whispered. Don't you ever touch me again. Melissa's lip trembled, but not in sadness, in fury. She looked at me then, eyes narrowing into something sharp and venomous. You ruined everything, she hissed. My breath caught. Mark stepped immediately between us, shielding me with his body. We're done, Melissa. Completely done. And you're not leaving this house until the authorities get here. Her chest rose and fell with rapid panic breaths. For a split second I thought she might lunge or run or lash out. Her eyes darted toward her phone near the counter, toward the door, toward the window. Mark raised his voice. Sit down. And she did. Not because she was obedient, but because she was cornered. Minutes later, red and blue lights flashed outside the window. The officers walked in with calm authority, speaking to all of us in quiet, steady tones. As they took Melissa by the arms, guiding her toward the door, she turned her head just slightly, just enough for her eyes to find mine. Her voice was barely a whisper. This isn't over. A chill rushed through me. Her words sank like ice into my bloodstream. Then she was let out, the door closing behind her with a soft thud that echoed through every room of the house. Silence followed, a heavy, fragile silence. Mark turned toward me, eyes full of guilt and devastation. He moved slowly, as if afraid I might pull away. But when he reached me, when he touched my hand, the weight of weeks, months of confusion broke loose inside me, and I let myself fall into his arms. For the first time since the accident, I didn't feel watched, or manipulated, or confused. I felt seen. I felt safe. And I finally understood. Melissa hadn't only tried to break me, she tried to break us. The house felt impossibly quiet after they took her away. Not the kind of silence that creeps in at night or settles when someone steps outside. This was different. It was a silence that let me breathe again. A silence that let my shoulders drop from the place they'd been anchored for weeks. The air felt lighter, as if Melissa's presence had been a weight pressing into the walls, into the floors, into my chest, and now, finally, it was gone. I sat on the couch for a long time, hands curled around a mug of lukewarm tea Mark had made without thinking. His hand shook when he handed it to me. Mine shook when I took it. Neither of us said much. There were no perfect words for the kind of heartbreak Melissa had inflicted. On him, on me, on our marriage. When the sun dipped behind the trees and the soft hum of evening cicadas filled the windows, Mark finally spoke. I'm so sorry, Claire. The words were raw, tangled with guilt and grief. I didn't answer right away. I just listened to the quiet, the real quiet, and let myself feel the truth of everything that had happened. Melissa had manipulated him, twisted his fears, used his trust as leverage. He hadn't meant to pull away from me. He had been pushed. I set the mug down and reached for his hand. We're here now, I whispered. That's what matters. He leaned into me, our foreheads touching, and we stayed that way for a long time. Not talking, just breathing the same air again. The days that followed moved strangely, half in fast forward, half in slow motion. Police reports, statements, questions I had to answer again and again until my mind felt exhausted. Melissa faced several charges: attempted fraud, identity manipulation, intent to coerce, trespassing, and a long list of violations that sounded surreal coming out of a detective's mouth. Her phone, her messages, her recordings, all of it was undeniable. Whenever I was asked how long I'd known something was wrong, I always paused, thinking back to her smile, her vanilla perfume, her gentle hands pushing just a little too close into my life. Too long, I wanted to say, but not soon enough. At home, Mark and I moved quietly around each other at first, the kind of quiet that comes from trying to rebuild trust without touching the fragile pieces too hard. He started cooking again, badly but lovingly, and I found comfort in the smell of pancakes burning slightly around the edges. We sat on the porch some evenings, letting the cool breeze wash over us while the porch light flickered above. Slowly, the spaces between us closed. He apologized more than I needed him to, and I forgave him more easily than I expected to, because he hadn't betrayed me. He'd been preyed upon too. He was grieving his sister, yes, but also grieving the version of her he thought he knew, and I was learning to trust myself again. The first real night of peace came unexpectedly. I woke around midnight, the house quiet except for the soft ticking of the hallway clock. No footsteps, no shadows under the door, no phone buzzing with secrets, just safety, gentle and quiet. I didn't cry that night. For the first time, I didn't feel the urge. A few weeks later, I started reclaiming the space Melissa had invaded. Tiny steps, little rituals, cleaning out the guest room she had occupied, washing every pillowcase she touched, opening all the windows windows until the room smelled like fresh air instead of fear. I moved furniture back exactly the way I remembered it. I tossed the old lotion she used on the bathroom counter. I donated the clothes she'd folded for me. I repainted my bedroom wall a soft blue that made me feel calm again. Every change whispered the same truth to me. This is my home. This is my life. This is my peace returning. Mark and I also began counseling, not because we were breaking, but because we wanted to ensure we never came close again. We learned to speak honestly, not just kindly. We learned how manipulation can sneak into relationships disguised as concern. We learned how to rebuild without pretending the damage had never happened. And through all of it, I grew stronger, more grounded, more aware of my own intuition, the one I had ignored for too long. Because the truth is, something inside me knew from the beginning. Knew the moment her smile didn't reach her eyes. Knew the moment she held my phone too long. Knew every time she asked just one question too many. Intuition whispers, and when fear drowns it out, danger finds a way in. I vowed to never silence that voice again. One afternoon, months after everything had settled, I sat on the porch with a fresh cup of coffee, warm breeze brushing across my face. Mark had left for work with a kiss on my forehead, the kind that made my chest warm. My phone buzzed beside me. I reached for it without fear, something I no longer took for granted. It was a message from Mark. Just thinking of you. I'll bring your favorite soup home. Miss you already. A soft smile spread across my face. My eyes stung, but in the way gratitude does, not grief. For the first time in a long time, I felt completely safe. But even in that moment of peace, a quiet thought drifted through my mind, not as fear, but as wisdom. What if I hadn't seen that first text? What if I trusted Melissa a little longer? What if I'd ignored the tiny red flags that tried so hard to warn me? Life changes on moments that small, and sometimes survival depends on listening to the voice we try so hard to dismiss. Before I close my story, if you're listening to this right now, I want to leave you with something gentle and true. Kindness is not always pure. Care is not always honest. And sometimes the person who smiles the softest is the one you must watch the closest. But strength doesn't always look fierce. Sometimes it looks like a whisper of doubt you choose to investigate. Sometimes it looks like asking for help. Sometimes it simply looks like surviving something you never saw coming. You are stronger than you know, and your intuition is louder than you think. Thank you for staying with me through this story. If it touched you or made you think or made you feel anything at all, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Tell me where you're listening from. Tell me what moment hit you hardest. And if you want more stories like this, full of emotion, truth, and the kind of twist life itself writes, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay connected. I'll be here, ready to tell the next one.